Today is December 21st, 2025, Sunday. This conversation is about a question many exchanges are beginning to face, but few are ready to answer. Where is the exchange's next real market actually? Not the next feature, not the next token listing, but the next market that carries scale, responsibility, and long-term economic gravity. Today, I'm joined by Dennis and by my partner, XRoss. Together, we'll examine what recent market signals are really telling us and what exchanges may need to internalize next.
Over the last 3 years, exchanges have expanded aggressively. Spot, derivatives, custody, wallets, layer 2, everything apps. Yet expansion is not the same as convergence. Infrastructure grows, but the center of gravity remains unclear.
And the numbers reflect that. In 2024, the top 10 spot CEXs recorded about $17.4 trillion, and the top 10 perpetual futures CEXs recorded about $58.5 trillion, roughly $76 trillion combined. Yet, exchange revenue remains largely fees times volume. That dependence hasn't changed.
Which is why the question is no longer whether exchanges can grow horizontally. The question is whether they are positioned to absorb a new class of economic responsibilities that were never native to trading platforms.
Let's anchor this in recent events. In late 2024 and 2025, Coinbase expanded into equities and prediction markets. Interactive brokers enabled stablecoin funding for brokerage accounts. SoFi issued a public chain stablecoin as a regulated U.S. bank. On the surface, this looks like convergence.
Yet technically, these moves still sit above the liability layer. They improve access, speed, and interface. They do not internalize the consequences of failure, drift, or systemic stress.
These announcements indicate where capital is currently willing to experiment. They also reveal, just as clearly, where ownership is still being deferred. Settlement mechanisms are advancing. Liability, however, remains largely externalized.
Let's quantify what we're actually talking about. Global supply chain finance exposure, including inventory, receivables, work in progress, is estimated by the World Trade Organization and World Bank to exceed $20 trillion annually.
20 trillion, not billion? Are you sure? To put that in context, the entire crypto market cap fluctuates around 2 to 3 trillion. The gold market is roughly 13 trillion. So, we're discussing a flow that already rivals the largest asset classes on Earth.
Let's quantify what we're actually talking about. World trade is already operating at a scale that rarely gets discussed in exchange strategy rooms. The WTO reports world trade in goods and commercial services expanded to about $32.2 trillion in 2024. UNCTAD indicates global trade is on course to exceed $35 trillion in 2025, and WTO's outlook places world merchandise exports alone at about $24.43 trillion in 2024. So when we say 20 trillion scale, we're describing the value flow supply chains already carry, not an invented market.
Now I need the sourcing to be clean. Where is the 20 trillion framing coming from? If we can't answer that clearly, people will dismiss it as narrative.
That's a fair question, Zrast, and it should be asked. Let's separate two things. One is the scale of global trade flows. Those are published numbers. The other is the capital tied up across the full order-to-cash cycle, raw materials and inventory, work in progress, goods in transit, delivery and acceptance, invoicing, accounts receivable under payment terms, and the reconciliation steps that can delay cash collection. When XRoss says 20 trillion, it's an order of magnitude reference anchored to the fact that trade itself already lives in the 20 to 30 trillion range depending on the scope. The claim is not, there's a brand new $20 trillion market waiting to be created. The claim is, A very large value flow already exists, and a meaningful portion of liquidity is delayed by time, fragmentation, and verification gaps.
I want to challenge a common misconception before the audience forms it. Supply chain capital being stuck is also how GDP gets produced. You can't unlock it and make the cycle vanish. Procure, build, ship, invoice, collect, that cycle has to exist. So what do you mean by unlock in a way that stays economically honest?
You're right to draw that line. No serious operator believes the cycle can be eliminated. When I say unlock, I mean something more disciplined. Compress cycle time where delays are artificial. Bring liquidation forward inside the cycle rather than waiting for the last day. Increase turnover, the same capital supports more completed cycles per year. That framing is CFO native. It doesn't promise miracles. It promises time compression, fewer disputes, and earlier liquidity under controlled conditions.
Cycle compression makes sense. But where does an exchange enter the picture? Give me a framework, not a white paper.
Okay, Zrast, framework only. Layer 1, standardize verifiable milestones. Supply chains already run on milestones: purchase order acceptance, production start, QA pass, shipment, delivery, invoice acceptance. The issue is that the truth of those milestones is fragmented across systems. A platform can standardize them into auditable state transitions. Layer 2, use smart contracts to release conditional liquidity earlier. Once a milestone is verifiable, smart contracts can release liquidity conditionally, not as a shortcut, as a rules-based acceleration. And yes, NFT-like receipts can represent unique, trackable claims tied to a specific milestone or entitlement. Transferable under strict rules. Layer 3, price time and risk transparently. When states and claims become standardized, markets can price time and risk with much lower ambiguity. That reduces dispute drag and improves time to liquidity. Layer 4, incentivize reliability and share the upside, sponsor-backed rewards. Cycle time compression is one value stream. The second is reliability, fewer outages, fewer disputes, fewer chargebacks, fewer SLA penalties. When reliability improvements are measurable, a sponsor can fund incentives tied to milestones, not promises. Mechanically, a sponsor sets a reward pool for defined outcomes, for example, verified uptime improvement, reduced incident rate, reduced downtime hours. When milestones and outcomes are verified, smart contracts release rewards. Participants share the upside, suppliers, operators, and the platform, creating recurring income without relying purely on trading fees. And we don't need the full white paper here. The point is verification, conditional settlement, sponsor-funded upside sharing.
Now the second pillar. CSP downtime loss, quantify it.
One credible enterprise-level anchor. A Splunk report with Oxford Economics estimates downtime costs global 2,000 companies about $400 billion annually. That's not CSP only, it's the broader digital economy bleeding when systems fail. But it puts the magnitude on the table, hundreds of billions per year. And at the incident level, Uptime Institute's 2024 outage analysis shows the distribution is heavy. 54% of significant outages cost more than $100,000, and 16% cost more than $1 million.
Great analysis, XROS. That's the framing we need. Supply chain is a massive value flow with time to liquidity friction. Downtime is a massive annual loss pool with time to settlement friction. In both cases, time and verification gaps convert into money.
To be fair, exchanges aren't standing still. They've expanded aggressively. Spot, derivatives, custody, wallets, earn programs, launch platforms, and now even equities and event contracts. So what you're proposing must be compared against what they're already doing in economic scale and feasibility. Otherwise, people won't accept the conclusion.
I agree with the premise, Zrast. These efforts are real, and many of them are necessary. But strategic direction requires a scoreboard. If we compare themes only by narrative, we'll never converge. So let's compare them on two dimensions the audience will respect. 1. Economic surface area, how big the underlying pool is. 2. Structural leverage, does the initiative change the ceiling or just compete inside it?
Here's the compact scoreboard using published anchors, not opinions. Crypto Pond Anchor, market cap around to $3 trillion. Global Trade Supply Chain Anchor, 32.2 trillion in 2024 for goods plus services trade, projected to be higher than 35 trillion in 2025. CSP Downtime Anchor, significant outages often exceed $100,000 and a material portion exceed $1 million. Now, map common exchange initiatives onto that. Derivatives, earn, launch platforms, wallets. These mostly deepen engagement inside the existing crypto financial surface. Equities and event contracts expand the instrument set. For example, Reuters notes event contracts could grow from around $2 billion annual revenue today to $10 billion by 2030. So the comparison isn't good versus bad. It's billion-scale adjacent expansions versus tens of trillions underlying flows and million-dollar loss events.
That's the disciplined conclusion. Exchanges can keep expanding horizontally, and some will do it well. But the next market with long-term gravity sits where the real economy already bleeds or waits. Capital delayed inside supply chain cycles. Loss delayed inside downtime settlement. And the key word is not unlock everything. It's compress time, increase turnover, and reduce settlement lag.
Dennis, thank you for grounding this in numbers and real operating logic. And XRAS, thank you for voicing what the audience is thinking. To everyone who stayed to the end, thank you. Here's the clean recap of what we established today. First, the next market isn't invented, it already exists where capital waits inside long order to cash cycles. Second, it also exists where money bleeds during downtime, and those losses are measurable. Uptime Institute reports that 54% said their most recent significant outage cost more than $100,000, and 16% said it cost more than $1 million. Uptime Institute. And the bridge between these two is the same. RWA that can be verified, made eligible, and settled. This is not a feature race. It's a role upgrade, using exchange-grade standardization, risk logic, and settlement discipline to compress time and reduce friction in markets that already pay the bill.
I'll add one market signal, because it explains why tokenization can fail and why exchanges have a real opportunity. IPWE is a well-known attempt to make intellectual property more transferable through NFT-like representation, even with serious industry collaboration, including IBM's published case study on IPWE using AI and blockchain to improve IP discovery and transactions. And yet it still struggled, not because the idea lacked imagination, but because tokenization alone is not a complete ecosystem. Without verification, eligibility rules, dispute handling, incentives, and settlement credibility, the model can break under real-world friction, and IPWE filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 2024. Now, here's the clue for exchanges. Why spend years and capital building a new marketplace from scratch when exchanges already have key infrastructure, users, cash flow, risk engines, compliance rails, and settlement operations? So I'll leave two threads for the people who want to think one layer deeper, and I won't expand them today. 1. A vertical IP marketplace beyond silicon, board level, system level, interconnect level, where IP stops being only a protection cost and becomes a revenue rail. 2. Vertical stablecoins for B2B incentives and settlement, built for working capital and accountability, not consumer hype. If those two threads make sense to you, you already see the next center of gravity. Thank you. And welcome to leave your comments or questions for deeper discussions.